Hi there, in this video I would love to follow up on the previous video I made around autistic burnout. At the time of recording, this is Neurodiversity Celebration Week in 2024, and I've been having so many conversations around the topic of autistic burnout. I'm Nikki Butler, also known as the Autistic Joyologist, and I was diagnosed autistic and ADHD in my mid-40s. And it sent me down a path of getting to deeply understand and know myself, but also to open up discussions and conversations and share the real lived experiences of those of us that are autistic and ADHD. Because I feel that the stereotypes and stigmas we currently have in society are really doing us a disservice, and we need to have more open conversations to create a better understanding. And my absolute mission is to ensure that our future generations live within a society that understands them, celebrates them and supports them in a much more inclusive way. And I think some of the challenges when I look at the topic of burnout are around what we hide, what we camouflage and what we mask. So what I mean by that is, if somebody that is experiencing us from an outside in point of view, it might be very difficult for them to notice that we are in a state of overwhelm or on the edge of or moving into burnout or in a full-on burnout. And somebody asked me to define what autistic burnout is. And I think for me that feels really unsafe, and I think the danger of putting a definition around what autistic burnout is and what it looks like means that we're not going to lean in to understand every individual's real life experience. So autism is a spectrum, and people are going to have a very different traits, characteristics, call them what you like, and their lived experiences will be really different because we have different stimulus, different environments that we are living within, different pressures that are going to contribute towards our burnout. You're going to see really big differences in terms of an outward example of what overwhelm and burnout might look like. So from my personal experience, much of my burnout comes from trying really hard to keep going, to function in essentially a world not designed for me, a neurotypical world. And the effort I have to put in to sustain that becomes more and more. And I end up almost in this tunnel of only being able to focus my energy where it absolutely has to be. So I had a huge corporate burnout when I was 36. And the people that were experiencing me in my corporate job, in my work environment, probably wouldn't have realised anything was happening. But behind the scenes, I wasn't sleeping, I had digestive problems, I withdrew from friends, family, I was snappy, I wasn't able to keep my home tidy. I couldn't function on a daily basis because all of my effort went into turning up at work, performing and coming home again. Now, that overwhelm, that build up to that overwhelm and that burnout was invisible to everybody. And I think that's really important to understand, that for many of us that are autistic and ADHD, how other people are experiencing that overwhelm and burnout is going to be almost as if it doesn't exist, or it's far more minimal than what's actually going on internally. And something that I've always said to people is my autism and ADHD has nothing to do with how anybody else experiences me, and everything to do with my own internal lived experiences. And I think that the way that I described my personal burnout was that kind of closing in of the ability to function in different areas of my life, until the point that I couldn't even function in a work environment. I hit an absolute catastrophic burnout state, which caused me to resign from my corporate job at the age of 36 and saw the end of my corporate career. And what happened after I resigned is my body and my brain literally shut down on me. It was as if somebody had tipped me upside down, emptied everything out. I had no physical, emotional or mental energy. I couldn't string a sentence together. I couldn't process any thoughts. I could barely get up off the sofa. I couldn't go food shopping. And it was as if, because I'd stopped and I'd let go, everything within me shut down in a bid to force me to rest and recover. And that recovery, the initial recovery, took a year. And I would go as far as to say I didn't fully recover until almost a decade on at the point of diagnosis, and that was the point I let go of the shame that I had attached to what I told myself was not being able to cope in the real world, to be useless at adulting. And I look back and think that the signs of that burnout were there for 18 months. I can see how over a period of time, my overwhelm, my stress levels and anxiety were increasing, my withdrawal from every other area of my life and the ability to function in those areas of my life was shutting down. It only really came to light after my diagnosis, when I looked at that through a far more self-compassionate and understanding lens and forgave myself for that, and actually looked upon that with great kindness. But the people on the other end of that in my corporate job didn't have a clue. They might have realised I looked quite tired, maybe I was a little bit snappy, if I was interrupted in the middle of tasks. But the thing is about autistic burnout being very different from a stress response that every single human being experiences, or a corporate burnout, is the additional layer that came with that. And that was that life is stressful enough as it is for everybody. We all have different pressures and responsibilities. But when you layer in the dealing with the things that are more challenging for me as an autistic and ADHD person, so the sensory overwhelm of being in huge open plan offices with bright lights, lots of noise, lots of things going on, dashing from meeting to meeting, trying to converse in a way that was completely different for me and filter the information that was important, understand what I needed to take away from that, and then what I needed to go away and deliver. Managing the different egos, agendas, politics that come within that environment, but on the outside appearing calm and in control and normal, for want of a better word, was exhausting. The additional effort was exhausting and had huge consequences. And that's all invisible. Now, everybody has such a different experience of triggers of overwhelm and of burnout. And I really don't want us to start to define what that means, because my worry is that if we have a definition, and if you or somebody you know is in a state of overwhelm or burnout, if they don't feel that they fit that definition, they might ignore their early signs, might not believe that they're in burnout until it's too late. And I think the biggest thing I've learned about dealing with overwhelm and burnout is, the first thing is to know my early triggers. I now know that my sensory overwhelm is really heightened when I'm in the early stages of heading towards a burnout or with overwhelm, and I can hear electricity. You know, the smallest noise is the loudest bang for me. Lights feel brighter. You know, that's a very early sign. But other people will have different early warning signs. So I think it's really important that we get to understand what our signs are. And then we need to be able to take a step back. So if you keep going, that burnout is coming, whether you acknowledge it and whether you take action or not, that burnout will find you. So being able to find ways to take a step back, to ask for help, which I know can feel incredibly difficult. If, like me, you went through decades of trying to hide the things that you were ashamed of or felt that you couldn't do well, being able to reach out and ask for help can feel incredibly difficult. But if you have people that you trust, I really urge you to do that, because just sharing where you are can feel like a weight has been lifted. So knowing the early signs, being able to take action by asking for help, or negotiating boundaries, saying no to things that are going to take you that step further towards an overwhelm, is really, really important. And giving yourself the time and space to recover in whatever way that feels is right for you, because I know I need peace and quiet. I love a weighted blanket. I love to cuddle my cat. Those things are sensory soothing for me. And I know I have to renegotiate boundaries, deadlines, and take a step back. But your needs might be different. And I think that's what I'd really encourage anyone to do that experiences overwhelm and burnout. Prevention is always better than cure. And I know that's easy to say, because when we're in it, it feels so overwhelming and like we're never going to come out of it. But I think being able to look for the lessons you can take from that, from how you might make some changes in your life, whether that's small changes or whether it is that you can make bigger changes or ask for help or set something up different in your life, being able to acknowledge those early signs gives you the power to do something about it. But I don't want us to have a prescription about what burnout looks like, how you prevent it, and what you do when you're in it. And I think having the conversations around lived experiences so we can start to understand ourselves better and have an understanding of others in our community means that we're opening up these conversations. We're stepping away from stereotypes, assumptions and stigmas, but we're being more inclusive and supportive. I really love to hear your thoughts on it, as always. This really is a time to open up conversations. Maybe you agree with what I've said, maybe you don't. Maybe you have some other amazing insights that you'd like to share. Feel free to pop a comment on the video below, reach out on my socials, or you can, as always, drop me an email, hello@autisticjoyologist.co.uk. Let's keep talking about these topics, and I will look forward to seeing you soon.